This sounds like an interesting approach, but I don't think that metacognitive therapy will work for me. I have tried metacognitive therapy and it just did not work. So welcome back to Metacognitive Therapy Central. This channel is all about helping you learn to develop a relaxed relationship with your thoughts and feelings and discover that you have much more control over your mind than you initially thought. What are some of the reasons why some people don't believe that they can recover from long-term depression or anxiety disorders? So before we look at the different reasons that this may be so, let's look at what it means to have suffered a long time from depression or anxiety. In metacognitive therapy, the reasons behind why we develop mental illnesses is because we engage in some sort of unhelpful thinking strategies. The main ones are worrying and ruminating. What worrying and ruminating means is that whenever we are triggered by unwanted thoughts or unwanted emotions. So I'm hit by thousands of thoughts every day. I have different emotions and different sensations throughout the day. This is not something I directly have influence over, but I can choose how I respond to these thoughts and emotions. And if I suffer from depression or anxiety, I usually respond to these triggers with worry and rumination. Whenever I have triggers about what is the point of everything or what if something terrible happens, I don't need to go in and solve that problem with more thinking. Because the more I think about this thought, the more I think about how I feel, the worse I am going to feel. So it's like scratching the wound. The more I scratch, the longer it takes for it to heal. And the same thing applies to the mind. The more I dwell on unwanted thoughts and emotions, the worse I'm going to feel, the longer it's going to take for my emotions to regulate themselves. The mind has this ability. It can regulate itself, it can regulate emotions, and it can take us out of negative experiences and negative thoughts and emotions eventually. But if we spend a lot of time worrying and ruminating, we're going to maintain how bad we feel for longer periods of time. So the idea behind metacognitive therapy is to help us reduce these unhelpful thinking strategies. It is helpful to reduce rumination and worry so that the mind can regulate itself. Metacognitive therapy assumes that this is something that all humans are capable of. So the mind can heal itself. Because think about it, if the mind was not able to overcome negative thoughts and emotions and traumatic experiences, then we don't have a very functional mind. The theory assumes that we all have this ability to recover from mental illnesses. The problem is just that we keep doing something, in this case, worry and rumination, that keeps mental disorders going. So we keep worrying and ruminating and trying to get rid of uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, which is the reason why we prolong these negative emotional experiences, which is why we keep feeling sad and why we keep feeling anxious. So the idea is to learn to let go of this overthinking and trust that the mind can heal itself. And by the way, worry and rumination is something that we voluntarily do. So although we're not always aware of it, we always voluntarily ruminate and worry about thoughts and feelings. So for someone who's been suffering from depression or anxiety for years and years, they have been worrying and ruminating for years and years. And the worry and rumination has become almost automatic. So it's not automatic because this is something they're doing voluntarily, but they're not aware of this. Let's say if I've been worrying my whole life about what if something terrible happens to my family? What if I get ill? And this is the type of thoughts I typically respond to with worrying inside my head. I am no longer aware that I keep worrying about these thoughts. I just do this almost instantly without even noticing that this is what I'm doing. Same goes with rumination. If I've been ruminating about my self-worth and I've been thinking all kinds of thoughts like I am not good enough, or people are much better than me, or I'm such a failure. And I've been ruminating about these type of thoughts for years and years. This has become my typical response. This is how I respond to negative thoughts about myself. I do that without even paying much attention to it. I just do this. whenever I experience negative thoughts about myself. This is something I typically hear from clients who've been ruminating and worrying for a long time. They keep telling me that it feels like this is automatic. It just happens without their influence. I do believe this is how it feels for them, but this is something that they do voluntarily. They're just not aware of this anymore. So in order to stop the rumination process and the worrying process, it is important that they become aware and that they believe that they have control over this process. So again, if someone has been ruminating about how a big failure they are, and they've been doing that for so many years, they have gotten this idea inside their head that they cannot control ruminating about their thoughts. So in order to stop the rumination and recover from depression, or in this case, low self-esteem, it is important that they believe that they have full control over their rumination. So it's important that this idea that they have lost control of rumination is sufficiently challenged. And it is best done in therapy, in metacognitive therapy, with an experienced metacognitive therapist. The therapist will help identify this false belief that they have lost control of rumination. And through sufficient challenge and some good behavioral experiments, they will realize that, of course, they have full control over rumination. The beliefs we have about how our thinking works is very, very important when it comes to interrupting negative thinking like rumination and worry in order to overcome depression and anxiety disorders. If you don't have control over your worry and rumination, you are going to continue worry and ruminating. So challenging this belief that you don't have control over worry and rumination is crucial for overcoming mental illnesses according to metacognitive therapy.